The Hague Initiative for International
A
Cooperation.
very important
In almost every language,
the Israel
other than
Institute of New
English
Zealand.
and
My roots
French.
come from Jerusalem.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ashley Church and welcome to the Israel Report. I'm here with Dr. David Cumin. And David, this week we're talking about the launch by Israel of a space flight to the moon.
To the moon.
To the moon.
Space IL is what it's known
IL.
as. It's a privately funded $100 million, which is cheap
Wow.
in the space race. Launched
Taking off
to
from
the moon.
the Negev Desert?
I'm not sure where it's taking off from.
Right.
It's launched.
Yep.
It's in the air now. It's on its way to the moon. And if it lands, Israel will be the fourth country in the world to land a spacecraft
And
on
the
moon.
purpose behind it?
Well, it started off as a competition that Google X put together. The competition ended, but the only Israeli team continued, managed to fundraise, have now launched. It's on its way. It's carrying some science equipment to measure gravity and distances, etc. And it's also carrying the complete Wikipedia entry in English and a copy of the Bible.
Wow. That's fantastic. And of course, that's got relevance to us here in New Zealand because Rocket Labs not too long ago was just the 11th nation on Earth to launch from New Zealand a satellite into space. So this makes Israel the 12th.
Well, yeah, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
And it's a tribute to what small nations can do.
Absolutely.
We're both tiny. Israel's half the size of Canterbury. 8 million people and 4 million people is really small, but the size of our hearts, the size of our souls and the size of our ambition means that we shoot for the stars and we'll hit the moon.
Now, the other thing I want to talk about this week is the news out of the UK regarding the way that the UK government is now going to treat Hezbollah, which of course is a terrorist organisation in the Middle East. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, speaking of rockets, Hezbollah has 120,000 of them not to go to the moon. They're intended to go into Israel and explode. Hezbollah is an Iranian-backed terror group. It's taken over part of the Lebanese government. And what has happened in the UK and New Zealand still is that there's been a separation of what they call the military wing and the political wing of this organisation.
Which is kind of a cute distinction.
Well, it's not cute, it's false.
Yeah.
And even the head of Hezbollah recognises it's false. Nasrallah has come out and said that there is no distinction between the political side and the military side. And so what the UK is doing is essentially closing this loophole and saying we stand against terror as a whole, and we're not going to distinguish between political and military and any arbitrary wings of any group. And so I just hope that New Zealand follows suit.
Yeah, so to make the same sort of distinction, unfortunately in the current political environment there's no sign that that's likely to happen, but it's encouraging that in the UK and in some other parts of the world there is this recognition of these activities after a very long period of time of effectively turning a blind eye to these things.
Yeah, it's the distinction has meant that the political wing can still be supported, which of course also supports the military wing. And so having the loophole allows Britons and New Zealanders to support terror, in a sense, without any penalty. And so really, the UK has done something that should have been done a long time ago, and hopefully New Zealand follows suit and takes a proper stand against terrorism in the world.
Now, the other thing I want to talk about this week is that we're about to launch a series of videos that are basically designed to address some of the myths about Israel and basically to correct those myths with proper information. And so we're starting this week, and we were just talking about Hezbollah and some of the acts of which essentially what are anti-Semitism by that organisation, although it's obviously a lot more extreme than anti-Semitism. So the first video that we are going to be releasing today or introducing today, and we'll be on in a few minutes, is by Eric George, and it's going to be about the relationship between the Israeli people and the land.
Yeah, so there's a common myth that Jews are not indigenous to Israel. It's a complete and utter myth, but it needs to be addressed properly, and Eric is going to do that very well.
Yep, fantastic. So let's take a look at it now.
Kia ora, talofa lava, and greetings to you all. I have a question. Can we know who the Jewish people are and where they've come from? The answer is yes, we can. In almost every language other than English and French, Jews are referred to as the Judean people. They come from Judea, an area incorporating modern-day Israel and the disputed West Bank. DNA testing, archaeology, and anthropological findings all confirm that the Jewish people are indigenous to Israel. But today, many claim that the Jews have no historical link to Israel. Here are some common myths. Myth number 1. Today's Jews are European. They are not from the Middle East. Science has destroyed this argument. European Jews, known as Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, share the Kohanite genes specific to the Levant, an area that includes modern Israel. And the Mizrahim, or Jews who spent their exile in neighboring Arab countries, make up more than half the current population of Israel. Many are descendants of the 800,000 Jews expelled from Arab lands around 1948. Their genetics are also identifiably Jewish. So, based on DNA alone, Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel. Myth number 2. The Jews are colonizers of Muslim lands. This view fails at the first hurdle, because Islam didn't enter this part of the region until the 7th century, an entire 600 years after the times of Jesus and the destruction of Israel's Second Temple. The land subsequently changed hands between Christian and Muslim powers until 1948, when the modern state of Israel was established. Myth number 3. The land of Israel is not historically significant to the Jews. This is just absurd. Israel is teeming with ancient Jewish holy sites, like the tombs of the patriarchs in Hebron, the resting places of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Leah. But these sites pale in comparison to the most holy Jewish site of all, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It was here that the first and second Jewish temples stood until they were destroyed, first by the Babylonians and then by the Romans. Many of the Jews were expelled, but even in exile, they never gave up their dream of returning to their ancient lands. Much of the Tanakh, or Old Testament, deals with the pain of exile. In the book of Psalms, we find the famous lines, "By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion." The capital of the Jewish nation is mentioned more than 600 times in the Old Testament, and Zion, another name for Jerusalem, is mentioned at least 150 times. And in the New Testament, Jerusalem continues to play a central role. Even today, at the end of the Jewish celebration of Passover, Jews cheer, saying, "Next year in Jerusalem." For the Jews, the dream of a return to their indigenous homeland is central to their very identity. Despite these undeniable facts, Israel's opponents still refuse to acknowledge the Jewish connection to the land. International bodies like UNESCO refer to the Temple Mount only by its Islamic name. And others speak of Israelis Judaizing Jerusalem, being clearly ignorant of history. Denying the Jewish connection to the land of Israel is nothing new. In 135 CE, Roman Emperor Hadrian, yes, the one who built the wall between England and Scotland, sought to wipe even the name of Israel off the map, renaming it Syria Palestina, and forbidding Jews to enter Jerusalem under pain of death. After the 7th century Muslim conquests, the Islamic shrine, the Dome of the Rock, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque were constructed on the Temple Mount. They remain there to this day. Despite all this, the facts remain. Jews are from Judea and have always maintained a presence in the land. Their history, their culture, significant landmarks such as Jewish holy sites, archaeology, and the evidence of genetic science all collectively prove this beyond doubt. The re-establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 was a case of an ancient indigenous people returning to their ancestral lands, with the revival of an ancient language and the restoration of self-determination lost for 2 millennia. That is something that should be celebrated. Kia ora, whaftaitele, and thank you very much. I'm Eric George for the Israel Institute of New Zealand.
The Hague Initiative for International Cooperation.
A very important virtue.
Almost every language
Israel
other than
Institute of New Zealand.
My roots come from Jerusalem.